Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today. So we are constantly bombarded with advice on digital funnels, banner ad spend, and click-through rates. But what if I told you that some of the most effective ways to drive conversions actually happen offline? This session is all about how to move beyond clicks and use high-impact real-world tactics to accelerate decision-making, build trust faster, and ultimately drive sales. Especially in MedTech and life sciences, where buying decisions are complex and trust is everything, offline touchpoints are often the difference between interest and action. We'll walk through specific offline strategies that have driven measurable results for startups and growth stage companies. And we'll also explore how to blend these tactics with your digital efforts for a more effective sales enabling marketing strategy. At the end of the session, we'll open it up for a live Q&A. So if you have any questions or want to dig deeper into something, jot it down and then bring it up at the end. We want this to be as practical and actionable for you as possible. So let's dive in. This webinar is geared towards CEOs of MedTech companies, particularly early stage ones, and also marketing leaders of startup and MedTech companies. So if you're one of those two folks, you're in the right place. If you're not one of those two folks, that's okay. Stay on. I'm sure we'll have something that will appeal to you as well. And who are we that are talking with you today? Well, I'm joined by our founder, Lisa Bixel. Thanks for joining, Lisa.
Glad to be here, Lauren, and to share what we have learned over the years.
And speaking of years, Lisa brings over 40 years of experience in medical sales, marketing, and commercial leadership. She's helped MedTech companies of all sizes launch products, build market presence, and accelerate growth. Lisa also recently published a book, So You're Launching a Medical Device, which you'll receive for free if you book a consultation call with us after this webinar. It's also available for purchase on Amazon. And I'm Lauren Dussman. I'm CEO of BMMG, and I've spent over a decade helping MedTech companies elevate their brand, drive sales, and break through in competitive markets. Our team knows what it takes to move from early traction to commercial success, and we bring that experience to every client we partner with. Now, who's BMMG? Well, BMMG first began in 2014, and 11 years later, we are very proud to say that we've served over 100 medtech and biotech clients. BMMG specializes in helping medical device and biotech companies strengthen their market presence, generate demand, and attract investors. With decades of experience, we deliver innovative, results-driven marketing strategies tailored specifically to your needs. And also, scrolling at the bottom of the screen are just some of the clients we've served in our 11-year history.
And Lauren, I just want to add that because a particular healthcare vertical is not shown here, that doesn't mean we lack experience in that area. We have experience in dermatology and women's health and robotics and other areas not shown on this slide. So I just wanted to call that out.
Good call out, Lisa. Thank you. Okay, so before we dive into the strategies, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge where many of you attending the webinar might be right now. Maybe you're juggling too much with too few hands. You're wearing multiple hats, moving fast, and trying to make it all work with limited resources. Does that sound familiar? Or maybe your sales team is stretched thin and every hour counts. You're trying to support them, but there's only so many hours in the day. Or maybe you're the one making the sales calls, working the trade shows, building the pitch deck, all while trying to focus on your actual job. And let's be honest, the market has changed. Buyers are harder to reach, and there's more noise than ever. And getting your message in front of the right audience feels more challenging by the day. We get it. We've worked with companies in exactly this spot. And everything that we're going to share today is designed to help you simplify, focus, and make meaningful progress with the resources that you already have. So let's talk about how. So you'll see the slide appear throughout today's webinar. We've created a visual map of our journey together, so you always know where we are, what we've already covered, and what's coming next. Think of this as our roadmap, designed to keep us all aligned as we walk through each offline tactic that we're highlighting today. We'll revisit this at every topic change to help you track your progress and connect the dots as we go.
Okay, so as digital channels become more saturated, it's getting harder for brands, especially in medtech, to stand out, even with solid content and strategy. That's where personalized offline tactics could really make a difference. So according to McKinsey, personalized interactions can deliver 5 to 8 times the ROI on your marketing spend and also lift sales by more than 10%. And that's not insignificant. That's not a small boost. That's the difference between perhaps a flat pipeline and real commercial momentum. This is especially relevant in markets where trust, education, and credibility are critical to conversion. MedTech, right? A well-timed phone call, a thoughtful mailer, or a personalized educational piece creates what we call high signal moments. They cut through the noise and help you build meaningful engagement with your target audience. So we'll walk through specific examples of these tactics in action shortly, but I want you to keep this in mind. It's not always about being louder. It's about providing the most value and being most relevant.
Absolutely.
Let's address trust first, because in MedTech, trust is really everything. Personal touches aren't just nice to have, they're essential when trying to influence high stakes buying decisions in a crowded market. These tactics create a level of connection that digital alone can't. So first, a live phone call. It's simple, maybe even considered old school by some, but it's powerful. You can build real rapport, understand pain points in the moment, and create a two-way dialogue that no email can replicate. Direct mail, when done right, meaning it's personalized and thoughtfully packaged, it shows effort and care. It grabs attention in a way that 1,000 unread emails never will. It also signals that your outreach is intentional, not automated. And finally, medical education. When you show up as the expert, whether on a disease state, a procedure, a treatment pathway, it shifts the relationship from sales to trusted advisor. It builds credibility, it opens doors, and helps you to get momentum with that particular prospect or targeted account. These personal offline tactics build trust, and trust drives conversion.
Absolutely. So let's expand a bit on why these personal offline tactics are so effective beyond just grabbing attention. First of all, you have reliability. Physical mail and phone calls often reach the intended recipient more directly and consistently than digital channels, especially in a hospital or clinical setting where inboxes are overflowing or are filtered. Next, we have the tactile value. Materials delivered via mail provide a sensory and physical interaction that digital simply can't replicate. A well-designed piece feels intentional and it can linger on a desk far longer than an email stays in an inbox. Third, it sends a signal of seriousness. When someone takes the time to call or mail something personalized, it communicates thoughtfulness and then also follow through. And those are the qualities that build trust and credibility with clinical decision makers. Next, these old school, as some might call it, methods cut through the digital clutter and they humanize your sales process. In medical sales, where trust, education, and relationships are critical, this professionalism, it really does make a big difference. Now, finally, last but not least, let's talk about the clinical education, specifically CNE, continuing nursing education. These offer a strategic way for reps to bring real value to clinical teams, especially nurses, while positioning your product within the context of improved patient care. Again, as Lisa said, this shifts the tone from selling to supporting. So these that we're talking about, they're not just marketing tricks, they're trust building tools that shift the entire dynamic of your commercial relationships. Okay, so let's be honest. Is your team focused on generating a lot of digital content, but overlooking building a strong funnel? Go ahead and vote, yes or no. Your answer is going to be private. Nobody's going to see what you say, and we won't judge. We've seen this story play out a lot. We'll give it just a minute. All right, let's see where this group stands. Okay, interesting. Well, you guys are definitely in the right place. So thank you so much for participating in that poll. Okay, here's where we are on the roadmap. We've covered the intro and the power of personal connection, and now we are headed into direct mail. It is one of the most overlooked yet most effective tools when done right. So let's talk about how to make it work for your team. And so as I just said, direct mail can be incredibly powerful. This slide walks through some of the most important do's and don'ts to keep in mind. First, don't just send your literature. Even if it includes something like a peer-reviewed reprint, you want the recipient to feel like opening your package is worthwhile. So it has to deliver real value. Lisa, can you just share a little bit about your mailing campaign you did with GE?
Sure. Yes, it's a while ago, but at GE Healthcare, we did a campaign that was considered to be really quite successful, not by our standards alone, but by customer feedback we received. And what we did was we put together 2 packets. Some of the things you're going to hear us talk about and reinforce is how we shipped it. We shipped it express mail. 2 packets went out to 2 contact points, CEO, service line leader. And the goal was actually to tell each of those recipients that we're sharing a package with the other one and stimulate internal dialogue. On the package itself, or in the package, was a free analysis of key performance indicators of that service line, of that department. And we did that for several departments within the hospital. Feedback from the CEOs was that it was really insightful. It was very much taken action upon. People who did receive that actually engaged with the service line leaders, and or vice versa, got action taken with the CEOs to talk about how to improve. So again, adding value. We're going to stress how sometimes you shouldn't just have a flat package, but if that flat package actually does include valuable content that they don't see elsewhere, data, lots of data, and it's personalized for them, then it could also be very effective. Lauren?
And thanks, Lisa. And as she just said, we should think about when we're doing a mailer, including something dimensional, something that they can physically interact with. This might be a tool or resource they can use in their practice, something educational they can share with patients, or even a sample of your product that can be touched, tested, or explored. Next, be selective. Don't mass blast 500 people. Instead, focus on a smaller list of high-value targets, the ones that matter most to your commercial goals. This way, you can afford to spend more per package and make it truly impactful. Also, and this might sound silly, how you send it matters. Use UPS or FedEx when possible. In my opinion, FedEx in particular still carries a sense of urgency and importance. And so a package from an express service is far less likely to be tossed or ignored by the gatekeepers. Finally, think beyond the envelope. A dimensional package signals thoughtfulness, credibility, and professionalism. And if done right, it can be the thing that gets you in the door when emails and calls have failed. This is about smart targeting and high perceived value, quality over quantity. And also just something to keep in mind is that just because you're using an offline or an old school tactic doesn't mean that you still can't incorporate technology. There are many ways that we can leverage tech in our mailers, such as a video that plays on a screen actually inside the mailer when you open it. Yes, this really exists. I've seen it. You can include a QR code that adds your contact information directly to a target's phone. Something that has a digital prompt that just makes moving to action easy for your target. So we can still show up in a modern and forward-thinking way, but break through the online barriers to make contact.
All right, so let's walk through a real world example of how strategic direct mail can generate quality leads fast. This orthopedic company was launching a new implant for soft tissue repair and needed to quickly generate leads among orthopedic surgeons. And instead of casting a wide net, they focused on a very targeted list of just about 200 surgeons, with each rep identifying their top 25 prospects. Again, kind of a smaller company. To keep costs down, the implant sample was produced in a plastic version that replicated the form and function and detail of the titanium product, but it was clearly labeled not for patient use, but provided just enough tactile value to engage curiosity. The package included a simple fact sheet and was sent to the recipient via United States Postal Service priority mail in a bubble mailer. Low cost, effective way to get the sample in front of the surgeons without it being tossed by a gatekeeper. And the result was impressive, a 12% response rate. That's 24 surgeons who proactively requested meetings with a sales rep. That's a remarkably high conversion rate, especially in such a specialized and hard to reach audience. And the client did a bit of A/B testing as well. So a secondary mailer was sent to additional targets. This time the client embedded the implant in the handle of a Lucite letter opener. That meant every time the recipient opened their mail, they were reminded of the product. They also used it as a patient visual aid. So when talking to a patient about the implant that would be used, they could refer to that and show the patient, and the patient could, touch it and see it from all angles. So it was an ongoing visual and a tactile prompt. So this case illustrates that with thoughtful targeting and a little creativity, direct mail can be both cost-effective and yield high impact. We wanted to give you a second case study because this is a great example of how a thoughtful, low-cost personal touch can lay the groundwork for stronger field engagement. The prior case study, as you can imagine, had a considerable price tag, still very effective given what it yielded in terms of a response rate. But again, this one that we're going to talk about now is very low budget, so very affordable. In this case, a new sales rep was assigned a large territory and knew that reaching each prospect in person would take time. So as an augment to their efforts in the field, they thought that it would make sense to introduce themselves to their territory to warm it up and make sure that people knew who they were and what their plans were for engaging with them going forward. So the mailing included a few key elements to make it memorable. Let's walk through those. First, a photo of the rep, especially post-COVID, that personal touch is quite meaningful. It made it human, it made it real, it made it personal, not just another mass marketing effort. Second, a quick bio was included to establish credibility. It highlighted this representative's background in the relevant disease state and her experience with the procedure and technology. Third, there was clear contact information and a specific date and time when she would be following up, making it easy for the recipient to anticipate and prepare for that next touch point. And it worked. When the rep began her initial field calls, she was consistently met with comments like, "Oh, we recognized your face. We got your letter. We knew you were coming." And so this built instant rapport, reduced resistance, and made the rep's first interactions feel like warm calls rather than cold ones. And it's a simple, scalable example of how strategic personal outreach can set the stage for real connection, even in a brand new territory. And again, like we said, at a low cost.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa.
Mhm.
All right, so we've covered the power of personal connection and how direct mail can open doors even when digital efforts can't. Now we're moving into phone campaigns, which is still one of the most direct, personal, and effective way to qualify leads and drive action when done right. So let's talk about how to make those calls count without sounding like a robot or getting shut down at the gate.
Great. So yes, we're going to shift to another high impact but often underused tool, the phone. A lot of teams overlook phone-based outreach, or most importantly, they do it, but they do it poorly. So here are some pearls. When done well, it can be one of the most efficient ways to build relationships and generate leads, especially when paired with offline tactics. We'll keep stressing this. This isn't necessarily an isolated activity. It's integrated. It's part of a programmatic approach and ties off to something else, like maybe that direct mailer or an invitation to a special educational program. So here's a few of the best practices we're going to step through. So first of all, call outside of clinic hours. Physicians are hard to reach anyway, but especially during peak clinic hours. The best times to call are early in the morning, over lunch, or after 5 p.m. These windows tend to be where things are quieter, you're more likely to get a live answer from someone and or the attention of somebody who could at least transfer you to the physician because they know that they aren't seeing patients actively. So that's if you have the physician's direct number, could you directly go into their office? So if you call the main switchboard, you'll likely get an answering service otherwise. So make a concerted effort to build direct office numbers and cell phones into your CRM for key contacts. We have subscriptions. I know that there's subscriptions out there to different services that can bump your list of names against databases to populate with phone numbers for direct office lines and or for cell phones as well. So those are some things that you can subscribe to and be able to actively look them up. Second item is to know the gatekeeper and to recognize their value. So receptionists, administrative assistants, even nurses often act as protectors of a physician's schedule. So be courteous, professional, and clear about why you're calling. Treating them with respect can make them allies instead of obstacles. Another next item is, use a reason that matters to them. Start your presentation or your discussion with them with something relevant to their patient population, their specialty, or even outcomes. So avoid generic intros. A good one might be something like, I'm calling about a patient solution that helps manage chronic constipation without drugs. And that one would be very specific, it would be relevant, and it could be attention grabbing to get you further into that office and to the right recipient you wanted to speak with. Next item would be to keep it brief and respectful. Again, we're all humans here. We're all recipients of phone calls when it's unexpected out of the blue. We want those to be brief and or purposefully scheduled going forward. So you have maybe 15 to 30 seconds to earn their interest right there on the spot. Respect their schedule though, and schedule a callback if necessary in order to go further with them at a later time that's more convenient instead of just launching right there on the spot. Use a colleague or a conference connection. So if you can tie your outreach to a known contact or event, even something simple like, I really enjoyed your presentation at ACS and I attended that last week. It builds familiarity, and again, it builds that trust. It makes you part of the inside team and that you're familiar to them and their world. Another thing is to use voicemail strategically. Don't skip voicemail. Leaving a clear benefit-oriented message and always repeating your name and number slowly is important. Be persistent, not annoying, and limit follow-ups to maybe once or twice a week unless you've been asked to do it more frequently. Pair your phone calling with outreach. We are just going to be like a broken record on that. Coordinate your phone calls with other touches like the mailers, the emails, or conference invitations, and reinforce your presence and make the call, again, feel less like it's out of the blue, but it's purposeful and part of a ongoing communication and relationship that you're building. And then be professionally persistent. Breaking through via a phone can take maybe 6 to 8 times actually. So keep track of your phone calls and make sure that you are respectful. And again, every time you do initiate a call, bring something new to the table, a fresh angle, a data point, or some sort of an insight. And finally, don't assume that in-person confidence for the sales team that you have translates to phone skills. A lot of great reps in person choke on cold calls. They hate them. So this is where a partner, someone who does this day in and day out, can make all the difference. We have a telemarketing, telesales team, and again, that's all that they do, and they're very sophisticated at it. They're not like the telemarketing companies that interrupt you at dinner. They're actually more like an inside sales team, all very much trained, familiar, experienced, and understand the healthcare world and how to navigate it.
Definitely. And one thing I also want to add here is that I feel like when we talk to a lot of our clients about phone campaigns, their immediate thought is, oh, I can't afford that. But to be honest, it's not one of these programs or projects that breaks the bank. There is a very nominal fee for every dial. There is a little bit of a higher fee for a successful target connection or meeting scheduled or whatever you want the CTA to be. So when we think about these phone campaigns, it doesn't have to be a $10,000 program. It can be very palatable, it can be very affordable depending on what your goals are.
Yeah, Lauren, just to piggyback on that, a couple of things. So, you mentioned costs, and it's true. What we try to always structure with our clients is the approach of, if you give us 1,000 names, we're going to charge you less for each of those touches, those dials, because that's less value, until we get through. When we get through and you're completing a survey or profiling a customer or setting an appointment or, securing an attendance to a conference, then that's when you pay the telemarketing team a higher value, a higher rate. So low on the initial dials, but when you engage and complete, that's when you pay a premium. So that's an incentive for them. So that's important. The second thing I wanted to mention is that we'll, be mentioning this later on at the end of this program, but one of the tools we're going to leave you with after this webinar is a workbook allowing you to put together some dollars and budget what your telemarketing campaign could look like with real numbers that would be something that you could, feel confident in budgeting for an upcoming initiative. Lauren?
Excellent. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, so this case study highlights how inside sales support can significantly extend the reach and effectiveness of your field team, especially when territory size or bandwidth becomes a barrier. In this case, field reps in large territories couldn't realistically meet with all their prospects. They needed help prioritizing which HCPs were actually interested and worth a visit. So they agreed to supplement their outreach with a team of trained telemarketers. These telemarketing professionals followed a script and positioned themselves as the inside counterparts to their outside teammate. This created a sense of continuity and professionalism rather than feeling like a random, disconnected cold call. The script they used included a brief, clear overview of the technology, questions about the contact's familiarity with the product, and a qualifying question about interest or readiness to engage further. This approach helped surface warm leads for the field reps, and in many cases, the calling team actually reached decision makers that the reps couldn't. One of the best compliments we heard was that a rep said, "Oh, I've been trying to get a meeting there for several weeks, and the telemarketing sales rep got through when I couldn't." That is the power of having a professional trained calling team that knows how to navigate gatekeepers, build quick rapport, and tee up warm leads for follow-up. The takeaway here is pairing field sales with a focused inside calling effort can dramatically increase access, efficiency, and also lead quality. Okay, next on our journey is C&E programs. Now, this is where things get really strategic. C&E isn't just about education, it's about giving your reps a high-value way to build relationships with nursing staff and shift how your brand is perceived inside hospitals, ASCs, and practices. So let's break down how these programs work, why they're so effective, and how to get one off the ground quickly.
It probably goes without saying, but there's tremendous value in helping healthcare professionals at any level earn continuing education credits. These are essential for maintaining licensure, and nurses are constantly seeking convenient, relevant, low cost, or free ways to fulfill those requirements. So we know CME for physicians can be challenging to access, not impossible. And that's a discussion for another day, maybe something we could talk about in a discovery call. But right now, we're going to focus on C&E for nurses, which is much more attainable, especially through partnerships like we have with a partner called Educational Dimensions we've worked with for decades. So this is a proven, repeatable program. And every time we've implemented it, it's been extremely well received by nursing professionals. Why is that? Because it offers real value. It's not about pitching a product, it's about educating around a disease state or procedure where your technology plays a meaningful role. The beauty of the model is that it allows a sales representative to deliver value first. It positions them as a resource, not just a sales agent. So that shift in the relationship dynamic can dramatically improve access and engagement at the hospital or clinic level. And here's a bonus strategy. reps can also reach out to local or regional chapters of nursing societies like SGNA, that was one that comes to mind, and offer to present at upcoming meetings. These are great entry points to introduce your technology, demonstrate clinical knowledge, and build brand recognition beyond just a single institution where you might be reaching out and aligning with just a single hospital for a lunch and learn. Again, local and regional chapters of these nursing societies are starved for placeholder content to be filled with something like your value, your presentation. And especially if you can offer that at no charge, then that helps them accomplish their goal of putting together a really great curriculum for an upcoming meeting and also be mindful of their budget. So everybody wins in that. So when done well, CNE programs can help you earn trust, build awareness, and spark meaningful clinical conversations, and all while serving an important educational need.
And Lisa, I know some of our clients have asked, who all, when we're on site at a hospital or at a clinic delivering a CNE program, do we have the opportunity to reach more than just the nurses?
Sure, great question. Yeah, when we are doing a CNE program, we are visible, even though the materials, the posters, the emails, the flyers are targeting nurses to come to a lunch and learn, let's say, grab a sandwich and listen to an hour's worth of content. That level of activity is going to be visible to others within the department. So oftentimes we hear that physicians popped in, grabbed a sandwich, listened for 5-10 minutes, maybe even longer, and got the information as well. So you'd be surprised at how the reach of that program, while it's just intended for nurses, actually does impact the whole department.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so if you're interested in launching a CNE program, here's what the process look like step by step. It's actually very manageable, and we've mapped it out clearly to help your team move efficiently. Step one is you'll meet with the CNE company. They'll send you a planning workbook in Excel format to guide your next steps, and it's actually very straightforward. Step two, you'll identify and define all aspects of the 1-hour educational session, including who should attend, learning objectives, and relevant outcomes. This becomes the foundation for your content and your structure. Next, you'll identify your faculty. You'll need to document everyone from your company who will be involved in presenting the program. This can include team members from sales, marketing, and your clinical teams. Anyone who will be speaking or facilitating needs to be noted here so they can go through the proper training and accreditation process. Next, and this step is critical, you'll develop non-branded content. This content must be educational, not promotional. No branding, puffery, or product claims. The CNE team will help review and finalize the presentation materials, and you'll also develop a script to ensure consistent delivery across faculty. Then you'll complete your faculty training. Everyone listed as faculty must attend a 1-hour generic CNE training webinar. This is a quick but really important step to ensure your program remains compliant and educationally sound. Lastly, you'll conduct internal training with your team to review your specific content, the delivery of the script, and the full CNE process to ensure everyone is aligned. Once this is all complete, you are ready to go live. This structure allows you to deliver real value to the nursing staff while also building trust and relationships that support your broader commercial goals. So these programs are developed for in-person and virtual webinar forums, so you'll have flexibility in the ways that your staff can deliver this accredited content.
Just a couple more points I wanted to make as well. Again, it sounds a little daunting because there's a lot of steps. None of them are particularly complicated, and they're all very cost effective. This whole program can be launched quickly, and when I say quickly, I'm saying within a couple of months and for under $5,000. So it's incredibly cost effective as an initiative that can quickly be deployed. But I wanted to just say that, we've done hundreds of these, and we're willing to help with anybody who needs assistance in terms of, putting together and exploring whether this is appropriate for you. Again, that could be something we do in a scheduled discovery call. And the other thing I wanted to stress is that These are tried and true, not just by us saying it for the clients we've served, but also companies like Boston Scientific, Medtronic, Johnson & Johnson. They've all been doing these programs for decades too. So they know that we, have this opportunity that's often overlooked and maybe even misunderstood as far as how you can engage with the nurse and again, become more of an ally in trying to impact that whole hospital.
Excellent.
Okay, so on the heels of that, we're going to talk about one more case study, and this is the final one we're going to do, and it is focused on the CNE program. So again, that goes beyond education and actually changes the nature of how company personnel are perceived within a hospital. So it's very powerful. In this particular case, the company had a new laser ablation technology for brain tumors, but to get it adopted, the reps knew that they couldn't just target the physicians. They needed to build trust and alignment with the rest of the care team and the nursing staff. So nurses would need to be educated on the procedure and then could, quite possibly, and did, become internal advocates. So how did they do that? The content developed for the CNE program was carefully crafted, as we've discussed, intentionally, non-promotional, no puffery, etc. It covered the current standard of care, what its limitations were factually, and then transitioned to what was this technology being a contemporary management of, again, brain tumors. And so that was using the laser ablation as a new option, and all very up and credit worthy from CNE organizations. So over time, reps ran dozens of these programs. This gave them consistent, meaningful face time with their target customers, not to pitch, but to educate. And in doing so, they built relationships and developed internal champions who helped carry the message forward within the hospital. And the impact was very favorable. Reps reported that nurses became allies, often suggesting the company's technology with surgeons directly without the reps' involvement or presence. So it was as if the nurses became deputized to be agents for the company's technology. Some even gained traction with regional nursing societies. As we mentioned, that was an ancillary benefit that further amplified the visibility and credibility for the technology in that particular region. And so what started as an educational initiative really did turn into a very strategic relationship building tool, one that opened doors, accelerated trust, and created real commercial momentum.
Awesome. And one thing I just want to add here is don't underestimate the nurses. As Lisa shared, they can very easily become mobilizers within your accounts, but they are the ones on the front line. They're in the trenches, they're on the floor for hours with these patients. And so they do very frequently make suggestions to the physician on staff about the best method for the patient care pathway. So I would just urge everybody, if you don't think that nurses could be a great advocate for your product or your technology, just think again about how you can leverage them and partner with them in order to find the best path forward that leverages your technology.
Good point.
Alrighty, so before we move on to our Q&A, I have a quick question for you. Would you be open to a short discovery call to explore how offline tactics could help your team drive sales, not just more digital noise? Just select yes or no in the poll, and there's absolutely no pressure. If you say yes, we'll drop a link in the chat where you can book directly with our team. It's quick, casual, and focused on your goals. And once you schedule a call, you'll receive a short 30-second video from me that will help you prep for our upcoming meeting and ensure you get the most out of it as possible. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap up that poll. Okay, we have talked through a lot, from direct mail and phone campaigns to CNE programs, all proven offline tactics that help teams cut through the noise and drive real sales. So now we want to hear from you. What questions do you have? Whether it's about implementation, timelines, budgets, or how to make this work with a lean team, nothing is off limits. So if you haven't already done so, please drop your question in the Q&A box, and let's make sure that we can make this as practical and personalized for you as possible.
Okay, Lauren, it looks like this one came in before we got some of our content covered on the CNE program. It asks, I need to access physicians and not nurses. Would a CNE program help me with that too? Do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, sure. So I know that we did address this during the webinar, but while targeting nurses and promoting to them within the facility, we have found historically that Lunch and Learn CNE programs do attract physicians that stop by and listen in. And then, as we shared, we hear that nurse attendees will bring up the technology they were trained on when they're in a procedure. So they're reported to be another channel for you to reach your physician target about your technology.
Great. There's a question here about our outreach. It says, do certain clinician specialties respond better to non-digital outreach than others? Lauren, do you want to take that one?
Sure. That's a great question. When it comes to telephone calls, we found that specialties like emergency physicians or radiologists, PCPs, OB-GYNs are actually more reachable. So think of those who are not going to be tied up for long hours in OR procedures and have more time in between patients. For direct mail, it's been our experience that basically all specialties will respond well to a quality direct mail package.
Great. There seems to be a lot of interest in the CNE programs, which is wonderful. This one came in just asking for, the recommendations on a company to use and the costs. Again, no problem repeating this because it's important information and there's obviously a lot of interest in this. We use a company, we've partnered with them for, gosh, I don't know, 18 years now, something like that. Educational Dimensions is their name. They're out of Florida. We'd be happy to make introductions for you, answer questions for you as well on how that process works. But, they're a wonderful company to engage directly with. The costs, again, you can expect that if your team that would put together the content is the real gating item. How to, put together that 1 hour presentation covers the standard of care, limitations of it, and then introduces your technology along with fair balance of anybody else who's a competitor out there. But you obviously get to focus on what your strengths and advantages are as well. So that is probably the biggest gating item, is putting that presentation together, having it be reviewed and make changes and review again, et cetera, until it's squeaky clean and approved by the CNE team. So that time frame can probably be done in as little as 30 to 45 days, but it can take longer if you don't have everybody's buy-in to complete that. That then becomes the burden on your organization, maybe in partnership with another company like a BMMG, but you put that content together. The cost for the educational dimensions and their rigor of the training and accrediting the staff, giving you all of the logistics that you need for, people who sign in their sheets and the certificates that go back to them afterwards for the CNE attendance. That runs less than $5,000 and can include both a digital as well as an in-person element. So you can do webinars, but you can also do in-person presentations at a local, dinner meeting, for example. So hopefully that answers your questions. We have a full packet on the process involved in that, and we can share that, as well as at the end when we talk about the resources. There's also a tab in our workbook specifically to build out a CNE program, so you can put some numbers, real numbers down, and set aside some budget for that. All right, here's another question. Again, this one's about younger physicians this time. It says, do younger physicians respond differently to direct mail and calls compared to more experienced physicians? Lauren, do you want to take that while I continue to monitor?
Sure. So that one's a little bit of a catch-22. While generally younger physicians are more tech savvy, you would think that they would prefer text, DMs on social, and emails, but on the flip side, they're actually sometimes more reachable and not as busy as their senior counterparts. So the novelty of the direct mail and the direct mailers might appeal to them, and their availability may mean that a direct phone call could actually be more effective than anything tech related.
Great.
And
Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I saw a couple more CNE questions here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is one that says, they offer a program already for some online vision classes, and want to know if that could be, something that could qualify for some CNE program. And I was just going to say, the answer to that is yes. You can take existing content. The only thing is, I mean, that would help you accelerate your process of putting together your 1 hour package, but it would have to be stripped of logos. Again, it's going to have to be fair balance, talking about current state, standard of care, limitations of it, and what your technology is in the new care pathway. And so as long as it meets those criteria, and educational dimensions, or your marketing team can help you massage that and get it all cleaned up. But there's no reason to think that your existing program couldn't qualify for that same content, probably with a few edits to it, because it wouldn't be just representing your company. It would be the broader educational focus. Okay. I've got another one. This is about my challenge is getting past gatekeepers when we call physician offices. Do you have any tips for navigating past the gatekeepers and getting directly to the physicians? Lauren, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So we understand that can certainly be challenging, but we do have best practices that have been proven to work effectively in these kinds of situations. So again, don't treat the receptionist, administrative assistant, or nurse as an obstacle. Call them by name and treat them as a part of the team, because they are. Also, sound like you belong, as Lisa was sharing earlier. Finding that connection. So you could say, "Oh, I'm calling to follow up on information that was sent," or, "Oh, hey, I was told by so and so to work directly with you to schedule a call." Establish that familiarity and remove it from a random, disconnected cold call. Next, like what we talked about, is call during the off-peak times when the clinician isn't seeing patients and will be more available to be reached directly without having to go through a gatekeeper. And then finally, involve the gatekeeper in the process by saying something like, "Oh, Sarah, could you help me understand the best way to get this important information to Dr. Smith?" Bring them along for the ride and make them a part of the process so that they're more likely to want to help you and feel aligned with you in the long run.
Great. And Christina, I'm sorry that I didn't answer your question directly or to your satisfaction, which is fine. So your question is, you've got existing pre-recorded content. Could it be approved for CNE? And I'm going to just tell you that the content itself probably could. I'll say 70% of it. Okay, so you're already further down the path than someone starting from scratch. But could you take that existing content and make it CNE credited as it is? No, I doubt it. And unless you already know that it is void of any logos on it, that it is non-commercial, there's no puffery, and it does a fair balance of the standard of care, its limitations, and what current pathways look like. So if those are all true, then it's quite possible that with just a few tweaks, it's ready to go. But I guarantee you, having done this for so many years with so many different presentations and different disease states and things and technologies, there's always changes to the deck that you think is ready to go, but it's not. So I would wager that your existing recorded content will need edits. So hope that helps.
All right.
Yep, you bet. All right, and
I
then
see another one. Oh, sorry, from the Q&A, because that's in a separate one.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on AI bots acting as phone outreach that sound like humans and have the knowledge to train them to answer that? I've seen great success in my practice and would love your advice. So basically AI instead of a telemarketing partner.
Certainly. I know I'll just comment and let you add, some more thoughts too. But I think that is evolving. Of course, I think we all would recognize that is the way of the future. More and more things are starting to be, AI as your frontline, handling of that communication. And then once qualified or reach a point where someone can't answer it for the AI database, that library, then it would kick over to a human, but it helps to handle the large volumes of the calling activity. So I think the same thing would hold true, that you could use an outbound AI tool to make those calls. But then a human needs to be there, because I know that navigating, to get to your right recipient that you really want to target, that physician, that nurse practitioner, whoever it is that really you want to present your content to, it needs a little bit more of a human touch to build that rapport and think on their feet, if you will. So I think that there are limitations, but I think it has its place. Lauren?
I completely agree with what you're saying. I think that AI definitely does have a place and it's getting so much more advanced and the voice patterns and it can be a really great tool, but there is still at this point nothing that can replace having human connection, even if it's via a phone call. I see another one here. Any suggestions to speak to a provider who keeps postponing for more than 2 months? We have a virtual care platform and want to present the idea rather than mailing. Any tips or ideas and any new AI tools to recommend? Well, I'm going to first talk about the AI tools. Is that we actually next month have a webinar all about AI tools, mindset, and shift in MedTech marketing. And we're going to do a deep dive into a lot of those. We can certainly chat offline about that during a discovery call before then. But I would highly recommend that if you're interested in the AI tools, you guys look for our webinar next month. And then Lisa, can we loop back to the question about the provider who keeps postponing and get your thoughts, and I'll add my thoughts as well.
Sure. That's a tough one. I think that, if someone keeps postponing, let's just break that down, right? I always, as a marketer, I like to think like my customer. It's whatever it is you have to say is there's not a sense of urgency enough to hear it, right? So how can you build a sense of urgency that what your product does or your solution offers is going to solve one of their major problems? So it takes a little bit more detective work, but if you can reposition what you're saying, what your offer is, what you're requesting of them, I think that you might be able to, play around with that a little bit and see, did you resonate with something that's keeps them up at night? So think about that short list. What keeps them up at night? Patient care, rising costs, I'm burned out, whatever their things are. Does your solution in any way address one of those? And then try to appeal to them with some relief or some insight and some guidance on one of those things that's been a real issue for them. Those are the types of things I would think would help to maybe keep that appointment that's been scheduled instead of trying to, keep moving it out further. Lauren?
I agree. I think you have to put yourself into the position of what keeps this physician or this provider up at night, and how does your technology or your offering solve that? So you're not going in saying, oh, here's the bells and whistles of this and it streamlines this approach, when that might not be what they care about. So hold up a mirror, think about what keeps them up at night, what is going to push them to action, and approach them with that, with data and with something that's a real problem. You need to deepen that pain for them. And then this is another option. It might not be as practical, but you could also just say, hey, you know what? This program, this platform isn't for everybody. It's for people, it's for the practices, the physicians who are wanting to be trailblazers to improve ROI by X amount. And that might not be where you're at right now. So we can come back to that when you're ready. That's a little bit more of it's a little bit more risky of a move, definitely. But I've seen that work in practice where they don't want to be left out of being this wave of people who are adopting a platform or a technology. Next,
Yeah.
I see, oh, sorry, anything else to add to that one, Lisa?
I was just going to piggyback on what you said at the tail end, which was, the next thing as a last resort, if you feel like you've done everything else we've talked about, is to just be human and try to appeal to them and say, respectfully, I've been trying to reach you and it's not like it's working. I'll stop bothering you. Do you want me to stop bothering you? You know, I mean, just appeal to that humanness, because I know I've done that with some potential clients that haven't been responsive to us. And when I finally, you know, just break it down to like, hey, I'm just trying to be courteous and follow up with you like you told me to follow up, and, you know, and it's not working. You know, what did I do wrong? I've even said that. What have I done wrong? Because obviously you're not interested in talking with me. And boom, up comes a response. I'm so sorry. You know, I kept pushing it off and pushing it off, but I really do want to talk to you. You know, then you just, you know, it's human to human, and it too comes with risks. But I think that more often than not, I see it, you know, it working that way when you just connect at a human level. So there's that. And Lauren, I'm sensitive to the fact that we have a few other slides we want to go through and the resources that we're making available. I've got one more question I see here that we can answer quickly, and then maybe we go ahead and move on.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so this one is how frequent and what should be max attempts to be made to reach a physician? I think we talked a little bit about that in a phone call method, maybe 6 to 8, you know, outreaches to try and get through to a physician. And then if that doesn't pan out, you know, maybe you have to call it at that point. But again, that's when you would say, all right, trying that approach didn't work. And then maybe you find an ally within the practice to say, how do I reach Dr. Smith? You know, this is so important, you know, Dr. such and such down the road and across the country at this, you know, at Mayo Clinic, they're embracing this. And I just want to make sure that your doctor's aware of this. How do I reach him or her? And so then you kind of partner with somebody who's on the inside to see if you can't get through. But I'd say from a phone calling perspective, about that 6 to 8 times is probably the most. And then you're just, you know, it's clear that they don't want to make the time. Okay.
Absolutely.
I think.
Awesome. Okay, thanks
Yeah.
for these great questions, everybody.
Yep.
So we've made it to the final stop. We've covered everything, and now we're going to share the tools that you're going to leave with or you're going to receive after the webinar. We will be giving you 2 things. First off is the Offline Sales Initiative Workbook. This is a worksheet that helps you map out and track offline campaign budgets from direct mail to phone to outreach and C&E programs, and it's built to help you plan smarter and move faster. Next, you can get some more expert insights from Lisa's book. If you want a deeper dive or just a refresher on some key concepts we touched on today, go ahead and check out pages 173 and 174. It's a really solid complement to what we've walked through. And then finally, you'll be receiving a sample script for sales calls. This is a quick hit reference for anyone doing phone outreach. It includes a really simple, proven script that makes your message more effective and memorable. So just make sure that you keep an eye on your inbox over the next day or so when you receive these, because we just want to make sure that you're leaving here not just with ideas, but with things that are actionable. So we really hope today gave you practical ideas and fresh insights for using offline tactics. Whether it's launching a direct mail campaign, building a C&E program, or supplementing your field team with proven outreach strategies. If you would like to, please go ahead and book a call with our team. Our webinar admin has dropped the link in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and ask her to drop that in there again. And we're excited to help you execute with precision, from crafting the right messaging to getting in front of the right people at the right time and in the right way. So let's turn today's tactics into tomorrow's triumphs. Thank you so much for attending.
Yes, thank you so much for your time and attention today. And we sincerely hope that what we've shared has been of value and also helps fuel your success. We hope to reconnect in the future. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.